This is a hearing before the Office of the State Engineer. It's on two change applications, A44045 and A44046. I'm Teresa Wilhelmsen, Assistant State Engineer, work in the Salt Lake office, and I'll introduce who else is up here with me. To my right is Ross Hansen, and he is our regional engineer out of our Utah Lake, Jordan River area office, which is also based here in our Salt Lake office. Next to him is Eric Jones, and he is the assistant regional engineer in the Utah Lake office. And to my left is
Let me be absolutely clear. Along with Dr. Yonke, I selected this well site approximately 20 years ago. Despite the misinformation being spread by some, the selection of this site has absolutely nothing to do with the recent zoning application of John Walsh, whom I haven't spoken to in at least 15 to 20 years. Geologically speaking, Emigration Canyon is a syncline. Compressional forces have folded up the north and south sides of the canyon, with the axis of the syncline running approximately up the bottom of the canyon. Structurally, beds dip towards the center of the canyon and slightly east. Water flow is to the west. This is a longitudinal cross-section running down the axis of the syncline, showing the dips of the beds to the east. And this is a north-south cross-section running through the midsection of the canyon. On it, you can see the 4 district wells, as well as a representation of the myriad of individual wells located in the canyon bottom. Note the significant distance between the district's wells and the other wells in the canyon, as well as Emigration Creek. The beds into which the district wells are constructed are highly laminated or layered. As the district took over and began to operate the water system in the late 1990s, it discovered that the well behaved as if they were very compartmentalized, as is suggested in the UGS study in the Park City area. For example, on one occasion I noted that while we were pumping well number 2 from a depth at 400 to 500 feet below land surface, well number 1, which is only several hundred feet away stratigraphically, was flowing still under artesian pressure. This phenomena is known as anisotropic behavior, where the groundwater flow is much greater in one direction than in another. In this instance, the flow of water is much greater along the bedding planes than perpendicular to them. Recognizing this anisotropic behavior led Dr. Yonke and me to change the source protection plan delineations which had previously been submitted by the Freeze Creek Water Company to properly report the linearity of flow to the Division of Drinking Water. Also recognizing that flow was limited across bedding led the district to drill, when it drilled the Brigham Fork well in 2002, on an angle to maximize the layers drilled through, as there is very little communication across the layers. This hydrologic property was further confirmed when we drilled the Upper Freeze Creek well in 2014. In the upper reaches of the well there was, as we've come to learn, a perched water zone, after which the well was dry for several hundred feet until we reached a depth of approximately 900 feet, and again found saturated strata. What is important to note is that the static water level in the Upper Freeze Creek well is far below Emigration Creek level, meaning it is absolutely impossible for water to flow from this well to the main canyon in the Freeze Creek area. Its pointed discharge is much lower in the canyon, and pumping in this well just physically cannot affect the main canyon wells or the stream flow.
Mr. Barnett, in connection with the work you were asked to perform to prepare for this hearing, did you investigate the geology and hydrology of the area of Freeze Creek and the impact of the proposed wells that are described in the change application?
Yes, I did.
What did you do in the course of that investigation?
Well, I reviewed some old notes and information that I've been collecting over a number of years, and then more specifically focused on a report prepared by the State Engineer's Office. Actually, it's titled Memorandum, dated November the 16th, 1988, to the State Engineer, Bob Morgan, from 2 of his staff engineers, geologists.
And will you give us the title of that, who it's from and the subject?
It's from Boyd Clayton and John Solom, and the subject is Freeze Creek and the Boyer well investigation.
Did you review any other literature in connection with your investigation?
Well, I made general reviews of the geologic maps that have been published, but most recently had relied more heavily on this report since it was specific to the Freeze Creek area.
Mr. Barnett, in your opinion, what would be the effect of withdrawing water from the wells, which are shown as the proposed points of diversion in the application, particularly with respect to the stream flow in Emigration Creek?
Well, it's my opinion that if you were to pump wells in the area of the two proposed points of diversion, that you would either be intercepting stream flow that would be moving down Freeze Creek either in areas as underflow or, again, surfacing as direct flow, or you'd be intercepting flow in the Twin Creek limestone that ultimately would result in recharge to Emigration Creek itself from the limestone.
And would that effectively reduce the flow in Emigration Creek, in your opinion?
Yes, it would.
Are you familiar with use by the Immigration Improvement District under its water right by lease to the Division of State Parks at the mouth of Immigration Canyon?
I am.
In your opinion, would water withdrawn from these wells interfere with the delivery of water to the state parks at its point of diversion at the mouth of Immigration Creek?
Yes.
Mr. Barnett, in your opinion, is there a difference in the travel time of water recharging the Twin Creek limestone in the area depicted on your schematic, which would eventually find its way to Immigration Creek? Is there a difference in the travel time of water flowing naturally and the water that would be available to recharge the groundwater from septic systems built in this area as a result of the use that is proposed in this change application?
Yes, perhaps significant.
Would you tell us what that is and why that occurs?
Well, if the flow were to be withdrawn from the hydrologic system that is keeping Freeze Creek alive in various reaches, the impact could be in very short term, clearly within days or weeks. If the flow intercepted the movement of groundwater through the Twin Creek limestone directly to an upwelling in the creek because of artesian situations, that flow could be also in that same season, that interference with that flow. If you're dealing with septic tanks, in the Freeze Creek drainage, the movement through those soils might be rather slow as the septic tanks disperse the flow. And if the flow were, if the septic tanks were in the, say, to the west in the Pioneer Fork drainage, the flow back to the general regime may be interrupted for decades, many years, 20, 50, 75 years before septic tanks might find their recharge down Pioneer Fork in those soils and recharge to Emigration Creek.
Is that also the case if the septic tank use were in the Brigham Fork drainage to the east?
Yes.
In 1991, as Eric indicated, the district constructed a series of monitor wells through the main canyon. Their express purpose was to monitor changes in water levels in various areas of the canyon to assure lack of interference. You can see that the water levels in these wells vary up and down seasonally and from year to year depending on hydrology. Despite the variability from year to year, you can see that there is simply no long-term declining trend in water levels. It just isn't there.
I'm Scott Boyd. I'm currently acting counsel for Echo Association and Mark Tracy regarding with the KETAM action as far as other actions. As a quick introduction, want to mention to the people of the audience, Steve Onisco, formerly with the Division of Drinking Water, is here. Steve was the one who had done an original report back in 2002 regarding concerns on some of the wells and specifically on the reservoir at issue. So could be available to answer questions if asked. I also send a shout out to Representative Brian King. It's a pleasure of him to be here, but this water area is within his area. Finally, just one quick comment. Mr. Barnett mentioned the Barnett-Yankee report. We've heard about this a couple different times over the years. We've never seen it. I would hope that that's something that we can get into the record, or even more specifically, to allow experts like Dr. Hansen to have the opportunity to review it themselves, because if they're making their primary decisions based on this research, it's probably something that we all need to see, especially this time. Then time over to Mark.
First of all, there were several that came and talked about the mining and groundwater in Emigration Canyon and expressed concerns about that impact to wells. We submitted evidence and information to you that shows, based on the monitor wells, there is no mining occurring in Emigration Canyon. There is no long-term trend in depletion of groundwater levels. And so those that came in here and talked about the mining of groundwater, certainly the district is extremely concerned about that subject. The district is one that watches that subject more than anybody else. They're looking out for the canyon residents and the canyon water supply, but there's just no evidence that there's mining of groundwater that's occurring in Emigration Canyon. Also, several folks came in and talked about sediment and other things in their wells. District's wells are a long, long ways away from these wells and absolutely can't possibly have any impact on sediment in people's wells. We've looked up several of the wells of the folks that have been protesting, and some of these wells are 50, 60 years old. I don't know when they were last cleaned. They were drilled into carbonates. Carbonates fill up and they get deposition in the carbonates, and I would be more than happy to talk with any of the well owners about proper maintenance or care of their wells that we might be able to assist them. Several of the wells were in areas where we have monitor wells, and in those areas we can see that the water level hasn't declined. And so there's got to be something going on with maintenance of the well. And so we'd be more than happy to assist those people to look at those kinds of concerns. There were people that indicated that somehow that the district indicated that there was no connection between the groundwater and surface water sources. And that is just absolutely not true. There is a very much direct connection between the groundwater resources in the canyon and the surface water resources. The issue is where does that connection occur? And for many of the protestants who are along the Emigration stream, that connection is very direct. Shallow wells right along the creek, taking water from the same source that supports the stream. When it comes to the Immigration Improvement District, the data shows otherwise. It shows that the primary point of discharge of groundwater that's being intercepted by the district's wells is down near the mouth of the canyon. And there are a number of pieces of evidence that point to that and make that conclusion. And so the district very much is capturing water to which it already has the senior water right to take. And again, the district very much pays attention to those kinds of things. Relative specifically to one protest I'll name, and that is the Salt Lake City protest. First of all, we have a little bit of a dilemma or problem. We don't know how to deal with that dilemma or problem in that a report was turned in here that was not presented in the hearing, and the district had no opportunity to examine the data. I don't know that we're asking for more time, but because we want to get this concluded and want to move ahead. But I think, if I understood the testimony of Dr. Hansen correctly, he's looked at historically, and the Canyon Creek has gone dry historically in the past, and it continues to do so. There may be a change in the nature of precipitation to more rain and less snow. Those are all kinds of things that are important things for us to pay attention to. The district and Salt Lake City have a good working relationship, and I think one of the things that just needs to be put on the record and very clear is that the district has a superior priority to Salt Lake City's priority. And if the district were to be operating as it did historically in the past, it would be down to Hogle Zoo, and it would have the opportunity to dry dam Immigration Creek. And Salt Lake City, under its water rights as well as others, would receive absolutely zero water in a dry year such as this. Salt Lake City and other junior Immigration Creek water right holders ought to be grateful to the district and the operations and the fact that it's diverting as it is now, because this summer there was always water at Hogle Zoo. And so you hear about the creek going dry in the canyon, but because of the significant return flows that come back, even though it was quite dry this summer, there was always water at Hogle Zoo. And so, you know, the operations of the district have been benefiting Salt Lake City. And if there were to be an issue between Salt Lake City and the district, Salt Lake City's already recognized the district has a senior water right. And so,
Yes. Priority, we've heard a lot of comments today about priority and how other people have senior priorities. And again, I'd just reiterate, I think people may misunderstand the priority of a change compared to the priority of your base water right.
turn the time back.